Hi everyone, good morning. Can you please rename yourself to your name and your organization? And here are some housekeeping matters. The webinar will be recorded. You can switch on your video and mute your audio during the session. At the end of this session, you can unmute yourself to ask the speakers any questions, or you can put them into the chat box. So my name is Sui from Cirado, and I will be your moderator for today. A very big thank you to all of you, especially the coaches and sports administrators, for taking your time out to attend this webinar jointly organized by Cirado and CoachSG. To give a brief introduction, CoachSG is an academy under the Singapore Sports Council, which focuses on development of coaches as leaders to possess the relevant competencies to realize the societal and national aspirations. So some of you might be wondering why an anti-doping organization like Cirado is doing a collaboration with CoachSG. To help put things in context, under WADA's new international standards for education, values-based education is emphasized as part of the 4 areas of a NADO's education program, which is important to implement among athletes and support personnel, especially coaches. So today, we will be giving an insight on how coaches can play an active role in values-based education the Singapore way. I'm happy to introduce our 2 guest speakers for the day. First, we have Mr. Azhar Yusof, the head of CoachSG, an academy that leads the coaching education and development of efforts across all sports in Singapore. He has a diverse background, having been a national athlete, an international match official, and a coach in multiple sports. A teacher by training, he headed the Physical Education and Co-Curricular Activities Department at Raffles Institute before joining National Institute of Education as a senior lecturer and assistant head. Mr. Azhar will be providing an overview of the coaching and sporting ecosystem in Singapore. Next, we have Ms. Eliza Tan, Manager, Character and Leadership Development in CoachSG. Eliza specializes in developing curriculum programs to upskill sport coaches and educators to foster positive behavioral and character development outcomes through sport. Eliza is also a trained behavioral consultant, netball coach, and has a background in sport management. Eliza will go into the details of the values-driven initiatives that they have. Without further ado, let's welcome both speakers. Mr. Azhar, please.
Thank you, Sui, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are. It's really wonderful to see so many of you here with us, listening to our sharing today. And we obviously have to thank Cirado, the Cirado team, for inviting us to do this sharing. And I think Sui kind of put things into context and perspective as to the relevance of what we're sharing. And we hope that you too will find it meaningful and there's some practical and meaningful takeaways for you. So the presentation really today is about sport, as we all know, as something that we want to put forth as a force for good, right? And our sharing is really around our own initiatives driven by CoachSG in relation to values-based coaching practices. So that's something that we've been kind of driving for the last couple of years. And we would like to share with you some of the things that we have done, and maybe you find some resonance in what we're saying or what we're sharing, and you can apply to what you're doing back home. Because from the registration list, I see that some of you are coaches, some of you are teachers, some of you are sport administrators. So what is the role that you play in ensuring or in driving a similarly value-based coaching practices in your sport or in your community or in your organization and association? So if you can look at the next slide that I'm sharing with you, then it's really our attempt to kind of cover everybody who's in the webinar today. And I hope the greetings that you see here is something that is in your own language. So hello and welcome everybody. If you have not been to Singapore before, then I encourage you to come and join us. And Eliza and I and Gobi and his team also will be happy to be your tour guide to bring you around the wonderful city that we have here in Singapore. So borders are opening up. So come and join us, and we are happy to share a little bit more with you. But the larger vision that I want to share with you, the big project that we have engaged in 2012 was this thing called Vision 2030. And the thinking is really that sport, instead of strategies for sport, we kind of flip it on its head to now think about sport as a strategy to bring people together, to build a sense of pride, sport as a national language. And the overall or overarching sort of aspiration is really for all of us to live better through sport. Now, in unpacking what this looks like, what the Vision 20 looks like, there are 9 levers, and you can see it in my next slide that shows you how this is unpacked when it comes out in a short while. Yeah, but before that, as you sort of alluded to earlier on at the start, um, if you look at the World Anti-Doping Code in 2021, it defines education as to raise that awareness, inform and communicate, to instill values, to develop life skills. And this is something that is particular or concern for us, and we are particularly interested in, because what we do in CoachSG is certainly aligned to developing character, instilling values, developing life skills, which are as important, if not more important, the technical skills of the sport. If we look at the next slide, we would like to just have understanding from you and your thoughts. So we're gonna bring up the Mentimeter page in a short while, but if I can ask everybody to go to Mentimeter and type in that code, and the question that we want to ask of you is, what do you think is your role in inculcating, instilling values and also life skills? So whether you are a teacher, whether you're a coach, whether you're a sport administrator, we like to hear from you what your thoughts are. So the first question here, right? What do you think is the role of a parent in fostering values and life skills in our athletes? So I know you may not all be parent, but if you were to wear the hat of a parent, what do you think is the role of parents in fostering values and life skills in our athletes? So go to Mentimeter and type in the code 70438857. I see some responses already coming in. This is meant for us to, warm up a little bit to each other. So I will be really, really happy if you can share your thoughts. So I see role model there. I see another role model. So that's wonderful to see. So parents are the main foundation. That's really excellent, right? Because the kids, first and foremost, will be engaged with the parents, right, before they engage with others, right? So you can click on the link in the chat box if you are still struggling to get to the Mentimeter. Yeah, wonderful to see that. Providing discipline, yeah, that's part of our life skills. Encouraging failure when it happens, wonderful, really wonderful. Keep them coming. Keep those responses coming. And you can see the responses as it scrolls up. Yeah. So the role of the parent in fostering values and life skills. Very good, very good. I see role model come up many, many times. Indeed, yeah. Because even when you're not doing anything, the kids are always looking up to us, right? Looking at what we do, what we say, and certainly, therefore, we need to be good role models and, really, espouse those values and life skills. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question and want you to put on a different hat now. So instead of a parent, we're asking you to think of yourself as a teacher. If you're a teacher, what is the role? What is your role if you're a teacher, or the teachers and your expectation of teachers? What is their role in fostering values and life skills? So it's the same Mentimeter, a helper. I see first response there. Yes. All right, guide and mentor. I like that. Guiding and mentoring. Keep those responses coming. I see role modeling again. So similar to parents and the role of parents, therefore, support and encourage. Guide, I see the word guide again. Yeah, keep those responses coming. Train them properly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, the teachers have gone through a certain set of training, and they would have acquired, competencies, perhaps more in some areas more than some of the parents. So they continue on that the education of the child or of the athletes. Yep, I like the responses, but you guys keep that coming. Role model and guidance. I see. Yeah, mentor again. Motivator. I love all the responses. Keep them coming. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next question. So it's actually the same question, but now you're taking on a different role. So if you are a coach, what is your role in fostering values and life skills in our athletes? So a little bit more of a direct contact point or touch point as far as the specific sport is concerned. What do you think of the role, or what do you think is the role of coach in fostering the same, yeah, values and life skills? Right? I see the same sort of words being used and popping up on the screen here. Right, mentor, training part. Yeah, keep the responses coming. Yeah, provide the environment, right? Experiences, guide and mentor them, to teach them, and about other values. Yeah, good, good, wonderful responses. Keep them coming. Promote discipline. Yeah, yeah. So I love what I'm seeing at the moment. You guys are really talking about the so many things, right, that we can use, we can teach through sport, and this really is the wonderful thing we call sport, right? It is the really important platform for you to be able to impart all of these values and life skills in our athletes. And finally, if we can switch on to the next sort of role that I want you to put on is really the sports administrator. Now, not really a very direct contact with the athletes, but they have a role to play, and some of you here are indeed sports administrators. So what do you think is the role of sports administrator in fostering values and life skills in our athletes? Yep, Kobe set up rules, processes to ensure right values are taught. Thank you for that. Yes, the sports administrator play a slightly different role, right? Not in direct contact with the athletes necessarily. The direct contact is really the parents, the teachers, the coach. But there is a role that the sports administrator have to play, right? Yeah, yeah, you can do that if you're in a position to tell them or to inform them about the good and bad. Yes. I like the point here, monitoring coaches, because if you're a sport administrator, you are after all uh, responsible for engaging the coaches, right? Hiring the coaches. So if you are selective in the coaches that you hire, in the staff members that you hire, then that reinforces this whole idea about inculcating values and life skills in our athletes. Maintaining those values, I like that, right? Maintaining the environment safe to practice, and I kind of connect that to the whole idea of safe sport as well that has emerged in recent times, as you know, right? That we want to create an athletic environment, a positive athletic environment that's free from harassment and abuse. Yeah. So I see oversee ensure integrity of an athlete in sport. So I think regardless of whether you are joining us today as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, or as a sport administrator, I think all of us have a part to play in fostering values and life skills in our athletes. And the challenge is, are we doing that? Can we do more? Can we do better? So I hope that the presentation today gives you some idea on what you can do in the different roles that you may be playing in your sport, in your organization, in your country, to really foster these values and life skills. So I'm going to bring you back to the slide deck. Yeah, so this is kind of what I mentioned earlier about how that whole Vision 2030 unpacked itself, um, in line with sport and strategy, in line with live better through sport. So you can see in this busy slide here, 9 levers, and each has a role to play. At the top there, Active SG, how we reach the masses, how we empower the vulnerable through Sportcast, how do we empower the people through our Team Nila and volunteerism, how we enable the ecosystem, and that's our Singapore Sport Institute, where we take on more of the high performance. And then at the bottom, you see the nurture the multipliers. That's where we come in. Sport as a force for good and coaches as the force multipliers. So we can see on the next slide that whilst we try to achieve all this, we are certainly not immune to the negative things about sport. And you can see on this slide here, we have had doping cases in Singapore. So Singapore is certainly not immune to doping cases. So doping, safe sport, and corruption knows no boundaries, right? We all can be affected to it if we don't put systems and processes in place in check. So Singapore is certainly not immune to that. Singapore is also not immune to competition manipulation. So again, these are all Singapore cases. And unfortunately, we have had to deal with this. So the question is, how do we have that prevention? Singapore is also not immune to incidences against safe sport or unsafe sport. And you can see here some of the individuals that have since had disciplinary action or court action taken against them because of what they did, inappropriate action or what they did. So that is something that is, I mean, these are things that are of concern for us. And how do we go about ensuring that we continue to have this space where it is safe for people to participate in sport, right? So that's why in Singapore we have the NROC, as you can see at the bottom there, and that stands for National Registry of our Coaches. So in the earlier Mentimeter, you talk about how at the sport administrators level, they have a responsibility to ensure that the right coaches are hired, that you have policies, you got systems and processes in place. So the setting up of the registry is because of the similar intent, that we want to make sure that the coaches who are actively engaged by parents, by schools, by clubs and academies out there are strong, those that are aligned to what we believe as far as coaching philosophy is concerned. And when you have a registry, the members of the registry would have to abide to all these standards, right? All these code of ethics that we have for them. So that is something that's powerful that we have in our country. I don't know whether your the countries that we have joining us today, you have a similar system. If you do, then wonderful. It's an opportunity for you to ensure that you have quality, you have standards as far as coaching is concerned. Now, if you go on to the next slide, it gives just a brief introduction about why we have been set up, right? So coach as a force multiplier, coaches as a force multiplier, and our strategy in CoachSG is really around a couple of things here: coaching development, develop the coaches to be really competent and strong, and we have this hashtag coaching better every day. That's what we achieve to do. Character and leadership development, that's where Eliza is at. And the sort of overarching theme here and what we're driven to is that better people make better athletes. So our focus is always to first and foremost develop that person rather not and not necessarily just in the sport, right? We look at it as a person, so better people, about developing better people, and we have done that, then we will make them better athletes as well. And the NROC that you heard just now, that's managed by our coach industry department. Next slide. So Coaches indeed play a critical role in character development of our athletes. And in Singapore, we have this Game for Life framework, a framework that establishes how we go about inculcating character, values, principle in sport, because we believe that sport can be very transformational in its effect. So I think I'm going to show you something in a short while.
Coaches, they come into this profession because of something in them.
Some people call it passion, some people call it purpose. Coaching is not just technical skills, it's a lot more than that.
It is about the holistic development, understanding and building relationship with the players, as well as to build a cohesive environment.
It's like a journey of discovering who they are and a journey of discovering who I am. When you see the coach, you see the culture of your team.
It is all about creating that environment that is conducive enough to bring out the best of an individual. And I found it meaningful to ask why they coach and what's their coaching philosophy. For me, I've always observed how my father would coach.
I think the thing keep me going is the player themselves.
Trusting the process to me is like rock climbing.
It is really about creating the environment.
As you go higher and higher, it becomes a great responsibility. Coaches, you have a very, very important role because you are dealing with people's lives.
Right. So that video
Coaches.
is available for you, and I think the slide that we had earlier on, Eliza, we can just move 2 slides back. Yeah. So the YouTube link is there, and we can put it up on the chat box as well. So the 5 coaches that you see there are some of our 5 of our many exemplary coaches that we have here in Singapore. So the person that you see on the left is a football coach. The person next to him, or the coach next to him, is a volleyball coach. She's a teacher coach. The one in the middle that ended off the video is our legendary C. Kunalan athletics. The one next to Mr. Kunalan is Louis Kang. So she's a floorball coach. And she is the first female recipient of our Coach of the Year award after 50 years. So we finally have a female coach to win that award. And another legend besides her is Ang Peng Siong, who was at one time the fastest swimmer in the world over 50 meters. So these are some of our exemplary coaches. And I don't know about you, but every time I watch this video, I get goosebumps, I got hairs behind my head raising because of what they are saying, especially Mr. Kunalan, right at the end of the video, where he says that coaches play an important role because we are dealing with people's lives. So that certainly is really powerful for me. So we like to hear from you. Yeah, coaches, you have a very important role. That's what he said, right? Because you are dealing with people's lives. And many other things were said in that video. So we like to just pause here and get you to reflect on what you saw in the video and what resonated with you. So in a short while, yeah. So we like to hear from you. Having seen that video, and I think many of you can relate to your own coaches, right? And how powerful they were in terms of having developed you to become a better person and a better athlete. So we'd like to hear from you. What were the things that resonated with you when you watched that video of these 5 exemplary coaches? In a short while, you will see the Mentimeter. Yep. And you can use the code 70438857. What resonated with you when you watched that video or from that video? So go back to Mentimeter. The code is 70438857. I would really love to hear your thoughts or your reflection on what resonated with you. I love that statement. Coaches leave a legacy. That's really wonderful. How the coaches create conducive environment for the athletes. Yes, coaches affect lives of the athletes. Yes, we are dealing with people's lives, so the role of coaches are certainly important. Keep those responses coming. I'd like to hear more of what your thoughts are when you watch that video. Yeah, I see the word legacy again. Yeah, I like this one as well. How to make a mark in athletes' life. And often when we ask successful athletes, especially, what was something that inspired them, they often talk about coaches, right? Yeah, they are the ones responsible to develop great individual on and off the field. I really love that, on and off the field, because we're not just the coach of the sport, right? We are coaching that person, the individual. Right? Lifelong commitment, yes, dealing with people's lives. All right, wonderful, wonderful. So powerful that you can influence the heart, the mind and the heart. Yes, I love that as well. All right, so I'm sure there are many more things that you can say about this, and we would really like for you to continue to share with us, those thoughts. I see Ma'am Ella talk about coaching giving inspiration to the athletes. Yes, that's the power of coaches, right? And what they're capable of doing. So I go back that WADA sort of line that talks about, wanting to inculcate the values and the life skills. And that's what we're all about, right? In true sport, we're trying to do that. So let's go back to the slides. And this is just a snapshot of the online materials that we have. And we align it obviously to the playthrough. I think some of you, or most of you, if not all, are familiar with this. And it talks about, coaches doing their part by using their influence to promote values and behaviors and to foster anti-doping attitudes. And anti-doping can be something that is not just at the high performance, but also right from when they start thinking about competition and they will start trying to improve themselves. These are the education that we want to give to our athletes, right? So that they are at the onset know about what are the do's and don'ts, what are the wrongs and rights. So this is something that we emphasize also as part of our formal coach education here in Singapore. Next slide. So we now translate to what were some of the key initiatives that drives values and coaching practices. And I now hand the mic, so to speak, over to my colleague Eliza for her to share more about what we do and how we do this here in Singapore. Eliza.
Thanks, Azhar. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet all of you. Hopefully one day in person when you come to Singapore. So now I'll go into more details on what the character and leadership development team in CoachSG is actually doing in order to drive some of these values-based coaching practices. So I think really, why are we putting so much emphasis on this thing about value-driven coaching? Because we know that in the sports context, there is this huge pressure of winning now in competitive sports. And even like studies have shown, and a very famous study, it's this Ham-Beller Values Choice Inventory. So it's actually a study, a questionnaire that has 21 sports scenarios, and the athletes are supposed to rate whether they agree or disagree on a 5-point Likert scale of 1 to 5, whether in that particular scenario, what the athlete did was right or wrong. So a bit worrying that what we found, and from this study, out of 72,000 athletes actually evaluated, that sports left to itself could actually erode moral character, such as values of honesty, justice, and responsibility. So if we don't put in a deliberate effort into our sporting activities, and we assume that for our athletes, just participating in sport could actually lead to positive outcomes. It's not the case. We cannot leave it to chance. So sports may be that perfect avenue in which to build character. I'm sure all of us in this room has actually experienced the positive impact of sports. That's why we are in this industry. That's why we want to give back. But sports does not build character necessarily unless a coach possesses character and intentionally teaches it. So not just the coach, but like what Azhar mentioned earlier, the role of a parent, the teacher, the coach, the sports administrator, everybody in the ecosystem has this part to play in ensuring that our athletes develop positive character. So recognizing this, Sports Singapore, back in 2013, we actually came up with the Game for Life toolkit. So why we decided to come up with this toolkit is because the teachers, the coaches were telling us, yes, I understand that I need and I have a responsibility to inculcate values in my athletes. But how? Can you tell me the how to go about doing it so that I have some form of structure within my physical activity, some form of framework to reference in order to make sure that the design of my sport fosters this positive attitude. And therefore, we came up with a framework that is localized to the Singapore context, but it's also definitely a framework that can be utilized in many other contexts. So it also includes a book. So this resource book can actually be also found online. It's stories of 25 of our Singaporean athletes whose lives have been transformed through sport. So later at the end of the presentation, I'll give you our website and you can also go in to download some of these resources. So as you can see, this Game for Life framework is meant to be a plug and play framework. So it can be applied in multiple contexts, such as within coach education, within the sports clubs, even in our Ministry of Education, public schools and higher tertiary education, they are also using some of this framework. For our youth at risk, we actually worked with our Ministry of Social and Family Development to contextualize this Game for Life toolkit for youth at risk. Even in corporates, so we have developed a team development program in the past called Team Up that helps the corporates to identify and use the Game for Life framework to bring out some of the team development strategies. So we have this framework. Thankfully, we're also grateful that it has been recognized by the International Olympic Council under some resources, good resources that you can reference for Olympic values education. And we'll also have won some awards from our public service ministry. So what we have found after surveying some of the athletes that have went through programs that have been using the Game for Life framework is that naturally, the sport educators, when they use the framework, there is an increase that in their inculcation of values during their lessons. So it can be during their coaching sessions, it can be during their physical education sessions. And when the coaches and the teachers do this, we also see an upward trend in the students or the athletes demonstrating such values-based behaviors within the sporting context. And also interestingly, we also found that the more frequent the sport educators facilitated values inculcation within their sporting activities, the skill level increased as well as the enjoyment of the lessons increase. So sometimes coaches have the misconception that if I infuse values within my coaching session, I don't have time and will my athletes enjoy the sport? So the whole intent of the Game for Life framework is to make sure that the learning of skills and values is actually integrated. So it's together and it's not meant to be two separate entities altogether. So in the next couple of slides, I will actually share with you some of the programs in which we help the coaches to go about discovering and upskilling themselves to do this. So if you remember, we introduced and we launched the framework back in 2013. So now it's 2020, it's almost 2022, almost hitting the 10-year anniversary mark. So we thought that in 2019, it was important to do a review of this framework and what's the impact of it. So we gathered some of our key stakeholders and partners in the same room. So you can see some of the logos. These consist of some of our school partners, okay, like the secondary schools, the Institute of Higher Learning, people from Ministry of Education, people from the sports academies that deal with youth at risk, as well as with grassroots sports, as well as partners from our Ministry of Social and Family Development, our National Youth Sports Institute, as well as PESTA, which is the equivalent of CoachSG, but for physical education teachers. So we gathered all of them and we asked them, what other levers will actually enable us to broaden and deepen the impact of character and leadership development through sport? So what more can we do? You know, after 6 years of having this framework, what else needs to be done? So these 4 areas came up, and I guess it could also apply in your context, where number one, they said that, hey, actually, we want more. We need to increase the training and upscaling as well as support structures for both coaches and teachers in order to implement character and leadership development through sport. We want further enhancements to the toolkit as well as values-based coaching resources. There needs to be greater alignment across agencies. So CoachSG cannot only be working by ourselves, but we need alignment with Ministry of Education. We need alignment with the schools, for example. And lastly, they said that it's not enough that y'all are doing good work. You need to tell everybody, you need to propagate it to the public that we are doing all these initiatives. You need more publicity. We need to change mindsets of people that character and leadership development is indeed quite important. So these were some of the details and the points that came up from the focus group discussion. Okay, so you can see that under training and upscaling, we have things like formal education of our coaches, non-formal education. So formal education refers to, for example, our coaching courses, and non-formal education would then refer, for example, to mentoring programs. And then we have support programs, learning networks. They even said, how do we know that our coaches are indeed competent and have the capabilities to inculcate values? So they suggested, let's have a competency assessment to evaluate whether the coaches are infusing values and the skills within the sport. And then you can see that in our enhancement of resources, they said that they would like more sport-specific examples. So if I'm a football coach, it would be really useful for me to see an actual football plan that has infused both the skills and values together using the framework, make use of technology. Alignment across agencies, like I mentioned earlier, was really bringing together and working with all the stakeholders in the room so that we sing the same tune and we sing the same messages. So an example of this is like how CRADO now is inviting us to share on your webinar so that the outreach is the same, because at the end of the day, we are all talking about values-based coaching, values-based education in different shapes and forms, but we all need to work together to amplify that impact. And lastly, an example of the publicity and narratives and measurement is that video that we showed you earlier. So that video, we actually produced it only last year. It's fresh from the oven, and it's one of our first video series that really shines that spotlight on coaches and how they go about transforming lives. So there are plans to develop more of these videos so that we can shout out to the public, because character and leadership is not something that you can just measure by numbers. It's very hard to say that, oh, we have impacted like 50,000 youths in Singapore and they're all better people. It's very hard to say. So we need all these stories, we need all these videos, we need all these narratives in order to convince the public, convince the coaches and our stakeholders that this is important. So before I go into the details of what CoachSG does or for some of these values-driven initiatives, I thought it'd be good to hear from some of you, and I also will be quite interested because we're all here to also learn from each other. Can you share with us some initiatives that you have implemented or you yourself have experienced or witnessed in your home country, okay, on values and life skills development? So it's the same Mentimeter code. I will switch the slides now to share it. So go ahead to actually share your responses, okay, on what are some initiatives you have implemented and experienced in your country that focuses on values and life skills development. So let's learn from each other. Let's just see what people from all over our ASEAN partners have implemented. Okay, nice. Yeah. Interview medalists. So this is part of the narrative development that that we can use on how sports has impacted them, how sports could possibly shape them to be better people. Yeah, so do keep the responses coming so that we can find out what are some of the wonderful things that you have done. Individual consultation with your athletes. Yes, so going down to the individual level and really getting to know them, team building. Yes, keep the responses coming. Yeah, Olympics values movement. So this is like something quite big. Anything else that you have experienced in your country? It could be something that you have seen in school, heard from your athletes. Yeah, so really tapping on the medalists to share their experience. Yeah, because I think from our experience, we know that when a country has that first gold medalist, there's really that ripple effect. So like when Yusof Schooling brought the gold medal home back in 2016, and now even now we have the world champion in badminton, Loh Kian Yu. So it really sets off that ripple effect. You see the participation levels go up. You hear their stories of hard work, how they've gotten there. Yeah, let's hear from a couple more of you. Currently, we have 7 more. There's about 80 of you in this room. So let's have more responses. Seminar workshops, yep. Online training, regular online training. Yes, that's something that we have all learned to pivot, like this webinar that we are doing now. If not for technology, we wouldn't be able to be speaking at such ease. Okay, so yeah, keep the responses coming. We will leave this Mentimeter open. Project-based learning and using the TPA-CK models that we can choose to build moral values and leadership through fun sport. Yes, so another model that you can use. Hey, thank you. So keep the responses coming and I'll actually go back to sharing my slides. Okay, so thanks for sharing some of the initiatives that you have done back home. I think it's good to just hear and learn from each other and share ideas. So in Singapore, this is what the team has created in terms of a learning pathway that we have for our coaches. So firstly, we have this initiative called the Values and Principles in Sport. Okay, and then they can move on within the values and principles in sport. There's also this Game for Life practical workshop where we don't want the coaches just to learn about the framework on paper, but we want them to be able to experience it, to be able to coach it and receive feedback during the workshop itself. And finally, we have the Game for Life competency certification and mentoring program. So in case you are wondering, the values and principles in sport is for all coaches who want to coach in MOE schools. So MOE means Ministry of Education schools. So these are mainly our public schools. So if they want to be on our National Registry of Coaches, and if they want to coach in our Ministry of Education schools, they must have gone through this course on values and principles in sport. So it's like a compulsory certification. And then the other two is more like a professional development program for them. for coaches that would like to hone their skills further in like driving values-driven practices. And then some of them even goes down to being mentored one-on-one over a 4 to 5 month period. And we also thought it was important that we have the Game for Life community of practice. So after the coaches or the teachers go through all of this, coaching sometimes can be quite a lonely journey, and we thought that it would be good to bring together all the practitioners, maybe twice a year or thrice a year, just to come together to exchange ideas again on their challenges, their best practices in terms of implementing values within their sporting program. So I'll go into a little bit more details on each of the program so that we can give you an idea, and perhaps some of you could take this away and implement it back home as well. So this is the National Registry of Coaches, like I mentioned earlier, and it's a compulsory certification. The values and principles in sport is compulsory in order to coach in schools and to be on our national registry. So what goes into these values and principles in sport course? These are some of the topics that you see here. We talk about coaching philosophy, we talk about positive coaching principles, coaching ethics and standards. And this coaching ethics and standards, we don't limit it only to our CoachSG ethics and standards, but also for our national standards for youth sports and the Ministry of Education's standards for coaches and instructors as well. And then we go into the Game for Life framework that I mentioned earlier and how to apply it as well. And we also cover anti-doping and safe sport principles and practices. So if you want to see a more detailed structure, we actually have a blended learning experience. So before they attend the course, they need to go through a 1.5 hours e-learning program. And then there'll be a 3-hour classroom session followed by a 3-hour practical experience. So in order for them to hit all these outcomes, and so that they come out of the workshop recognizing the important role that they play, and at the same time, they're also equipped with some fundamental knowledge about this topic as they go out to coach in schools, in the clubs. So this is just an example of the topics that we cover in the e-learning, the topics that we cover in the classroom. So we use things like reiteration, we make them reflect on their coaching philosophy. We have some activities and discussions around scenarios, what should they do if they were the coach? And a lot of these scenarios are from real life examples, or perhaps cases that have happened in the past, or complaints that we receive surrounding this topic on values and principles. And then we go into the explanation of the key points in the Game for Life framework. So the practical experience, as I mentioned earlier, is really a 3 hours practical experience led by the trainer. So the coaches, they actually get to experience what it's like to be in a sport-specific activity that coaches both skills and values, so that they see for themselves how it can be done, and then they plan, they experiment in their small little groups for the rest of the afternoon. So after this course, if you see here, they don't just attend and then they go home. There's actually homework to submit before they actually receive the certification, so that we can make sure that the 400-500 coaches that go through this program every year, they have some level of awareness of how to inculcate values within a sporting program. So this is just some pictures of the practical experience. You see them having group work here, so they get to do it in groups. They select a sport, they demonstrate it for 15 minutes. Some of them do planks. So you see this picture here is very interesting. You want to guess what sport you think they were demonstrating? You can just type it in the chat box. Just make a guess. So you see chairs here and scenario. Any guesses on what sport do you think this was? You can, badminton, okay. Any more guesses? Thanks, Julie, for that guess. Swimming. So Gobi gave the answer because I think he was the one that was helping us to deliver this workshop. You can see him here, this is Gobi here in the picture. So yes, this was actually swimming coaches, as you know, because we do these workshops in a sports hall. they couldn't really use the pool to demonstrate, but they were really creative. They took chairs and they were teaching their athletes how to do the front crawl stroke. So they were just focusing, on these values of focus and consistency on how you can, concentrate on the form. So our coaches can get really creative, and this was one example of such things, that how you go about, if once you get the concept, you can think about it, you improvise, and then you focus on, the attributes and the skills at the same time. So lastly, is the Game for Life Mentoring and Competency Certification. This was a program, again, that came fresh out of the Azhar last year. And it actually helps. We thought that to push and take this further, so we don't want to just have workshops, but now we want to start identifying coaches who are indeed competent in using sport as a platform for character development. So they actually go through one-to-one mentoring. So you see the coach here in the picture. This is a football coach, and this was his assessor at the final assessment. This was Alan, Gobi's a very good friend as well, okay, who was actually debriefing him on what are some of the improvements and areas that he can take away after his coaching competency assessment. So for this particular program, we deliberately, before I show the video, we deliberately actually put coaches and mentors who are not of the same background together, so that we actually focus on the value-driven aspects instead of the technical aspects. So I'll stop talking now, and I'll show you a video of what some of the mentees and the mentors are saying out of this program. So enjoy.
The program has led me to impart values to my players almost instantly, not only in terms of values, but also their technical aspects.
Now I definitely feel more confident in imparting values to my athletes. I think this Game for Life framework is really useful, especially for teaching beginner athletes.
So we are looking at the coaches being able to develop the athletes beyond the technical and tactical, but to make them better individuals and better people. Structured mentoring is something that we strongly believe in to complement the formal coach education that we have.
The very deep discussions we got into how to coach values better while coaching skills really benefited both me as a mentor and my mentees as well.
Research actually have indicated that having a mentor will actually help in your coaching career. This program is unique in a sense that I think it has established a framework for mentor and mentees across different sport, different setting, and definitely they are good example, to show to the coaching fraternity.
So my mentor Nyaptai is actually a football coach. He's not a canoeing coach, but that helps him to bring a different perspective, and I found that very useful.
I've been through the journey of a coach, and I've seen how important it is for one to have a mentor, to have someone to journey with you in that coaching journey.
When I started coaching, I'm lucky that I have a few experienced coaches guiding me. I see the benefit of having mentors, so that's the reason why I joined this program.
The biggest satisfaction for me is seeing my mentees actually grasping everything that I've been teaching, and then making sure that they practice and they try it on their student athletes.
To me, it has been very successful because without trying to focus so much on the technical aspect, they are actually doing it on their own, and on top of that, the values were imparted smoothly.
If our coaches are trained in this area, and it will really complement our sports CCA teachers who also are doing the same thing, trying to develop positive culture in our sports CCA. This is very aligned to our MOE new CCE curriculum.
At CoachSG, we strongly believe that the GFL mentoring program is very integral in developing better coaches, better people, and better athletes.
hope you enjoyed that video, which provided you with an overview of what the Game for Life mentoring program is about. And as I mentioned earlier, as far as possible, if you notice, like Cheryl, the canoe coach, she was paired with a football coach. And this was done deliberately, okay? Because we, as far as possible, we want to pair the mentors with coaches that are of similar category sports or coaching experiences. So like for the territorial invasion sport like football, hockey, or similar. So like Gobi, he's also one of our mentors, but I'm not going to pair him with a hockey coach. So he is mentoring football coaches, for example. And also the other thing that we look at is the coaching experiences. So if a mentee is coaching children of 5 to 12 years old, as far as possible, I also want to make sure that the mentor that I pair him or her with has that kind of experience in perhaps teaching children that was 5 to 12 years old when they were teachers, or coaching 5 to 12-year-old children as well. So in terms of the level of participation, so whether it's at the developmental level, somebody's okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think somebody was not muted. It's okay. So even at the level of coaching, so we have to make sure that the mentors has experience, for example, in high performance, or if it's dealing with youth at risk kids, the mentor also has experience in that. So there's a few permutations and a few combinations that we have experimented with in terms of the pairings as well. So in case you're wondering what is the commitment for this program, this is actually an overview. So we have broken up the mentoring program into 3 parts. So part 1 being the whole preparation and alignment stage. So we will get the mentee to meet with their allocated mentor to sit down before the program and to identify what is it that you want to achieve after this 4 months of mentoring. What are your goals for the program? And they actually write it down on a piece of goal setting material paper and they submit it to us, so that it actually zooms in, because the mentoring program is not very long, it's only a couple of months. So this helps them to identify what exactly they want to work on within this short period. And then part 2 would then be what most of the time is being spent on, which is the observation and the mentoring. So this will take place over 3 observation sessions. If the mentee wants to do more, but usually it's quite rare, about 3 they would be ready. And then for all these observations, they need to make sure they come prepared with a session plan. The mentor has seen the session plan, vetted it, given feedback, and then it will be kind of a back and forth feedback loop between the mentee and the mentor. And finally, after the 3 observations or the 4 observations, if they feel that they are ready, they will then inform us, CoachSG, to say, okay, I'm ready to be assessed. Can you send assessors down? And for this assessment, we will send 2 assessors down when we have set assessment rubrics to see whether the coaches are demonstrating competencies regarding planning, delivery, feedback, as well as overall classroom management. Okay, and then they will have a closing reflection session with their mentors to end off the whole program. So in the video just now, when you saw, it opened with some of the coaches smiling on stage, holding like a certificate. These are our competent coaches that we recognize in a very small ceremony for their investment and professional development in this program. Okay, so in total now, we are having our 2nd batch, and hopefully by the end of this batch, we will have approximately 50 to 60 coaches that are Game for Life competent and trained. So lastly would be the Game for Life community of practice, where we bring not just coaches, but PE teachers and coaches together into one platform just to exchange ideas in order to address practices, strategies, and challenges within this domain of character and leadership development. Okay. So I think we still have some time left. So we thought that given there's quite a number of coaches in this room, we'll go into a little bit of details on how to apply the Game for Life framework. I know that within the next 10 minutes, it's impossible for me to actually impart all the knowledge to you, because usually this workshop takes about 4 hours, but at least it will give you an awareness of what the Game for Life framework is and some ideas that you can take back home. So if you remember, this is the Game for Life framework, and we have split it up into 3 different pillars. So the first pillar being performance, social, and moral attributes. The second pillar being the type of activities that you are using. So if you are a basketball coach, naturally you'll use basketball. If you're a football coach, you'll be using football. Or some coaches, they make use of other sporting activities just to expose their athletes to more sports. And finally, the last pillar is the actions by instructor or the coach in order to check, act, and reinforce these values. So I'll go into a little bit more details. So why did we go down the line of wanting to classify the values into 3 different categories? Because there's really so many values out there. Off the top of your head, you can easily identify 10 values or 20 values. And we thought that it was important that we segment this different categories, because as coaches, we find that we tend to focus more on performance values. It's quite natural to us, so things like being disciplined, being focused, being confident, having consistency. So all these are performance-related values that will be very effective for skill learning and have this direct connection to success. So the next category would then be your social values, where we talk about teamwork, accountability, responsibility, and it involves often how the athletes interact with one another, and also values that you can also transfer easily outside of your sporting context. And finally, we have the moral values. So moral values are things like integrity, respect, loyalty, sportsmanship. And it's meant to moderate our desires for success with this sense of righteousness. So if your athlete is, is actually owning up to their mistakes during a competition match that could cost them that winning goal, for example, is actually what we say that the moral value should always be the one that sometimes need to outweigh certain performance values. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of how you could also potentially segment some of the values that you want to teach your athletes. The next pillar is on role learning that I want to zoom in on. So role learning, often as within our sporting context, we have things like captain, vice captain, and then we stop at there. But there's actually a lot of opportunity to allocate roles such as peer coach, competitor, official, in order to bring out certain values in order for the athlete to perform that role well. So I know it's not very clear, but you can see that at the side here, we actually got some students to write it down on what makes a good coach. Okay, what makes a good sports person? So things like they wrote down, it's like, a good coach is fair, is understanding, and then a good sports person plays by the rules, no cheating. So all these were written down by our athletes after we gave them this particular role. And we asked them, so how are you going to perform this role well? What values do you need to perform this role well? So this is something, again, quite simple that you can also experiment with your athletes and your students. And the pillar, which is what we call the short form or how we help coaches to remember, is the CAR. So C, A, and R, right? So what do we need to do beforehand, before the coaching activities? What do we need to do during the activities? And what do we need to do at the end of training, and perhaps sometimes even during the activities? So it's linked easily to the key coaching skills of demonstration, providing feedback, observation, and analysis as well. Okay. As you can see, this is a typical training plan that we have. And what is unique, so all these are pretty standard things, like the training objectives, the group size, the number, the equipment, the duration. We deliberately put this column here on values and specific behaviors so that the coaches are thinking and the teachers are thinking and planning on what they want to look out for in terms of the values and specific behaviors that can be brought out during that training activity. And within here is the coaching cues of check, act, and reinforce that we want them to start thinking about and listing down. So very quickly, I'll show you like an example of a football training plan. So this particular coach wanted to teach his players the technique of passing a low ball with an inside foot. So, football, just passing a low ball and using the inside foot, not the front of your, feet, but on the inside. And he identified the values of teamwork, concentration, and serving. So we said that it's not enough to just write down the value, but to be really clear, you should write down the specific behaviors as well. How are you going to know that your athletes are showing teamwork? So if you see all these behaviors like them showing appreciation, supporting and encouraging teammates after mistakes, you know that there's some level of teamwork going on there. And how do we know that our athletes are concentrating? So it's about staying focused in their role and showing the effort to demonstrate the correct technique. So this is an example of values and specific behaviors. The next slide I'm going to show you is a very detailed slide, okay? But it gives you an idea. So this part, pretty standard things that you would have in your lesson plan, the time and the duration. And then we talk about the content. What is it about the sport in terms of the technical skills are you going to teach? So, what is the activities that this coach is going to use? So nice activities here. And the important bit that we get coaches to write down is on the check, act, and reinforce. So I know at the first glance, it looks like really detailed, a little bit intimidating. But once the coaches get the hang of it, you can notice that within the check, act, and reinforce, the things in bold, like concentration, serving to passing, are how attempts on how the coach is going to integrate both the skills and the values together. So it's an example of how he connects teamwork and concentration and connecting this value of serving to just a simple drill of passing the football. So if you are thinking about your teammate, how can you what kind of pass will you give to your teammate in order to serve your teammate well? You're not going to give your teammate a bad pass, for example. So it's just different, an example of how a coach has attempted to integrate the value of concentration as well as serving or teamwork into his football training drill. So there's many ways that you can use to contextualize the values to the sport depending on what activity that you are using. So with that, that's actually the end of our last slide. And we wanted to just end off with why we are doing all of this, because we know that quality coaching programs will impact and have effect on producing quality coaches, and quality coaches will then impact on quality performance of our athletes. And hopefully one day when our athletes actually have that experience in the sport, a positive experience, they will go on to be great coaches. And if they are great coaches, they can go on to be great coach developers for some of them one day. So when we focus on our coaches, our athletes succeed. And that's what we believe in CoachSG. So thank you for your attention. And we hope that the presentation has been very, given you some useful insights on what we do here in Singapore. And yeah, we're open to any questions now for the last 15 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Eliza and Mr. Azhar. So for the participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the speakers.
We do have resources on our social media pages. You see there, Eliza shared about the link to our Facebook page, the link to our Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel. You can look it up very easily, and you can find all the resources that well, not all the resources, but some of the resources that Eliza mentioned, the videos that you saw earlier, it all can be found on our social media pages and our website.
Mm. Okay, there's Mr. Reynaldo. Do you want to ask your question?
I saw a
Please.
question earlier from Victor about national philosophy on sports, NPS. Victor, are you still here? Maybe you want to sort of verbalize your question or turn on your mic and ask us that question.
No, just go ahead. You can read my question. I think it's.
Okay.
I hope it's clear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Victor asked a very good question about, is there a national philosophy on sports that has been identified and verbalized to the sporting community and anyone and everyone concerned with sport? So Eliza, if you could bring back to the Vision 2030 slides right at the beginning, then that's how I will respond to that question. It's a really good question, and I think it's important that everybody is aligned. So the Vision 2030 project was published, well, the results of it published in 2012, but we got together sometime in 2010. So over a year or more than a year, actually, we got different stakeholders to come together and talk about what is it that we want for sport. What are the possibilities that sport can bring to us? And that's how, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of flip things on its head. So it's no longer strategies for sport, but it's using sport as a strategy. How do we do that? So that, in essence, became our philosophy on sports and what sports can do for Singapore and Singaporeans. So you can see here the 9 levers. So sport has the ability to, inculcate holistic active living. When everybody is living more actively and more healthily, then you have greater productivity in the work, greater engagement. So what does that mean? It means that everybody must have access to sporting opportunities or physical activity. So that relates therefore to enhanced access and creating that shared experiences. So if you have national events, then everybody will look forward to that national event, and we have one year leading up to our National Day celebration. So that becomes a topic for discussion, and that brings people together to be proud of the achievements of our athletes and to be proud to be a Singapore citizen or to be Singaporean. So we this is the overarching tools. Philosophy is to live better through sport. So I hope that
I
answers
so
the
wanted
question.
to add on, like we have national standards for youth sports philosophy. So if you can see, I know it's a very, I quickly pulled out this table, it's a very wordy table, but there's very clear standards on what the youths who are participating in sport. So this came, Sports Singapore and the Ministry of Education came up with this youth standards together so that it's consistent across the stakeholder groups. So you can see that, for example, anti-doping is part of our standard 9 of no harmful substances, and standard 4 is also about having that values as well. So hopefully this gives, you can Google national standards for youth sports Singapore, and you also be able to find details of this on our website.
Thanks, Eliza, for explaining that a little bit more. So again, we're happy to share all this with you. I think the slides will be made available by Sirado to all of you, so you can look at it in detail. And you also have our contacts, or we will provide you with our contacts when we share this material, so that you can also connect with us. And there was a question asking about what can be done to start a values-based coaching program. I guess in a way we are fortunate here in Singapore that we have CoachSG that drives all the coaching, education and development efforts across all sports. So because we have the mandate, we are able therefore to say that, okay, it is mandatory. We require that all our coaches in the registry to undergo this particular program, and Eliza mentioned it, the values and principles in sport. So that is the key to for coaches to align that, okay, we must have the right philosophy before we take up coaching, or this is what coaching is all about. So it starts from there. And if you are able to pull that off, to have a national registry where you then have leverage to make it or to mandate people to do this, I think you are a one step, you have a leg up in terms of making sure that you have this values-driven coaching practices. But I know that that may be difficult for some of the countries here where you will take a long time before you can convince people to set up a registry. So I would say that you can think big, but you start small, right? Think about what you can do, what is within your means. So if you have a coaching association, you can sort of offer this to them. And Eliza and I and our team are more than happy to go into a webinar call, perhaps go over to your country and run train the trainers program, so that we can equip your own strong coach developers or trainers or coaches to be able to run this on your own. I think that's what we want to do. We want you guys to be able to run this on your own. And if it helps for us to run webinars for you, if it helps for us to go over to your country and, as I said earlier, run the Train the Trainers program, we're open to doing that. Just connect with us, and we're happy to see what we can do to help you. In terms of, there's another question. Did you come across any challenges? And I connect this to a question that Edgar also asked about. There are some coaches who are more result oriented and forget times about the teaching of values. So that's the same challenge that we see in Singapore, that traditionally the coaches don't see teaching of values and life skills as one and the same, or as things that you can integrate in your coaching practices. So the way we deliver this program is that they don't see it as separate, they see it as one and the same. So if you think about, we recently had the Winter Olympics and the Paralympics, and of course, every time Olympics come around, Paralympics come around, Special Olympics come around, we always have really, really powerful videos, images of athletes doing really, really wonderful thing, right? Somebody gets injured and they wait for the runner, and help the runner up, abandoning the race sometimes. At the recent Winter Olympics, we had, the gold medalist. This guy finished first, but he waited until the rest of the participants, right, or the rest of the competitors finished the race before he walked away. Now that has nothing to do with technical skills, right? It's really about humanity. It's really about that values, that what does he believe in? And that relates to what the coaches teach them about what is important. What are the things that need to be addressed. So we want to position, or we have been positioning to our coaches, that you don't separate the two. You don't separate the tactical skills and teaching of it, or coaching of it, with the coaching and teaching of values, and life skills. It's one and the same. So it is when you integrate it, becomes very powerful. So that will be my response to that question.
Okay, thanks, Azhar. We have another question from Chandan. How can we build trust between the coach and his athletes?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think there was a similar question earlier about the trust, right? And I responded by saying that to us, relationship is a cornerstone of coaching and coaching practices. So if you don't have a strong relationship, then you're not likely to be a successful coach. That becomes very transactional. It's not transformational. And coaching is or should be transformational in nature and its approach. So I think if you want to build a strong relationship, therefore, you need to have that trust. So trust is integral. And I said in my response in the chat box, it's not just about the trust between me as a coach and the athlete, but also with the parents, because it is, it takes a village to raise a child. So it cannot just be you. It must be pulling in all the other partners and stakeholders. So that trust must be established by having open and transparent communication. For example, so telling the athlete, these are our goals. We work towards that together, and keeping the parents informed of it, keeping the teachers informed, keeping the administrators informed. So it is really important to develop that relationship, and the relationship is founded on trust. And once that trust is eroded, unfortunately, then we have a toxic environment. And again, if you look at examples that are reported in the media and so on, there have been instances where you have institutional bullying, for example, and this crosses into the realm of switch sport. At the organizational level, there's bullying, there's harassment, and that is unhealthy, and that certainly will destroy and that will erode the trust. So trust to us is really, really important in building relationships.
Thank you. Eliza, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope. Yeah. So I think there's also another question about from Reynaldo, right? In terms of how do we standardize coaching methodologies in particular sport when coaches have different approaches and trainings and certifications. And I guess it relates to another question from Natasha, where the asking whether all coaches in Singapore have graduated from an educational background. So I think for our coaches, and Azhar, please feel free to add on, all of them are from diverse education backgrounds. So we have coaches that have graduated with a degree, but we also have coaches with diplomas and different backgrounds. But how we go about at least ensuring some levels of standardization within our coaching standards is that in order to be on our national registry of coaches, they need to have certain coaching qualifications. So these coaching qualifications and certifications will come in the form of the values and principles in sports cert. For example, standard first aid is one of them as well. And also they need to have a coaching theory cert, a coaching technical cert, as well as a foundational sports science cert in order to be fully on our national registry as a member. So all these coaching curriculum that undergirds the different certifications is overseen by CoachSG. So CoachSG comes up with the theory contents, the sports science contents, the values and principles in sports contents, and we work very closely with our National Sports Association to ensure that these contents are also relevant and contextualized to the nature of the sport. So that is where we have to work quite closely with our stakeholders. We also work quite closely with another Institute of Higher Learning Education partner, Republic Poly, to augment our courses so that as many coaches actually go through it as far as possible. Yeah, so this is one of the ways that we are trying to standardize and align the efforts in terms of basic coaching standards in Singapore. So to top all of that up, after they go through all these certifications as a basic requirement to be a coach, we don't just leave them there. So we also have continuing coach education workshops. So for example, things like the structured mentoring program, and many other random workshops throughout the year so that coaches continually develop themselves and actually stay relevant. Yeah.
And I would say that Eliza's comment also connect to what Ronaldo is also asking. Ronaldo, you asked very, very good question. I must say that you must come over to Singapore and sit down with us for over lunch, over coffee to talk about all the many questions that you have. But I think those are wonderful questions. What Eliza shared is really our by having a national sort of coaching accreditation program, we're able to kind of standardize coaching methodologies across different sports. Because coaching pedagogy can be applied, the sound and contemporary coaching pedagogies can be applied to badminton, can be applied to rugby, football, and what have you. So I think that's what we have by way of the national curriculum, national certification program. And to your point about parents and limiting parents who try to coach their children and their child athletes, I would say we want to bring them on board. So in Singapore, we recently rolled out a program called My First Coach, and it's targeted at parents. So if I were to ask you what your first coaches are, many of you may immediately think about your parents, right? Because if you think about the people that first introduced you to throwing and catching, the first time you did throwing and catching, who was the one who coached you or taught you? The first time you kick a ball, the first time you go into the water, who was the person who coached you? And I would say that that would be the parents. So we have a program where we educate parents to be good first coaches for their own children, and they have for the understanding of some basic coaching pedagogies as well, simplified so that they can understand it a lot better, and they can then in turn coach and teach their own children. So that's what we have here. I hope that answers the question. I see quite a lot of comments coming in, but I shared earlier also that we do run teaching workshops on a regular basis, and some of them are also online or on our Facebook page. So you can just scroll through our Facebook, you can find some of these e-workshop. And I also mentioned that we have our annual coaching conference at the end of the year. So you can look out for that. But the big conference that's coming up, again, I said it in the text. Next year, we are proud to be the first host in Southeast Asia, the first city in Southeast Asia to host the Global Coach Conference, the prestigious coaching conference by International Council for Coaching Excellence, ICC. I think some of you may be familiar with that. So that's happened at the end of the year. It's in 2023 and November, 29 November actually to 3rd of November. So look out for that. I think I can get from Cirado all your email addresses. Once we have more information ready to be blasted out on this, we can send it to your emails so that you can join us in Singapore and we can see you face to face.
Okay, thanks Azhar and Eliza. Due to time constraints, we need to wrap up this webinar. We'll be sending out a post survey link. So if you have any additional questions, you can put it in the form. So before we go, Mr. Gobi, DG Cirado would like to say a few words.
Hi everyone. I'd like to, again, in terms of time, it is a wonderful session. Once again, my thanks to both Azhar and Eliza. It was really a detailed one. I just have 2 or 3 points, a very short one. As an individual coaches, please take it with you with a very open mind and ask yourself, what can you do as an individual in terms of a philosophy, in terms of creating a culture, in terms of promoting values. If you're representing your organization, take a step back and see whether you can bring forth to your organization this aspect of coaching, values, and the possibility of collaborating even with CoachSG. As for the NADOs, which are the National Anti-Doping Organization, please liaise with your coaching department, all right, and related stakeholders, because this is an overarching idea about values-based education, and it is good to see the integration, the people who are involved, the number of participants going through this values-based, and having all these stats in place. All right. I know someone, Chandan, I think you have asked for the link. Eliza or Azhar, if you can put in your chat the Sports Council link where they can look into some of these resources, I would really appreciate it. Even if not, when we send you out all the emails, we will do so. Chandan, I'm actually based in Singapore. I'm a Singaporean actually. Okay, I think you asked that question there. All right, so that's basically which we have. Azhar, Eliza have also given you their emails. Thank you very much for even putting forward your emails. And I think it has been a wonderful session. We also hope to have one more section on values-based, bringing in 3 old sprinters who are fantastic in this region, probably in a few, in two months' time or so. Okay, and we'll keep you posted. Go to the Cirado Facebook page, like our page, and you will know some of our webinars that are coming along. Before we close, can I get all of you to on your video to just take a shot? So we just like to put it into our publicity. So if you can just put on your video, I think Sini will take a shot. Sini, you ready? Anytime?
Yes. So there's quite a few pages. So everyone just keep on smiling. Yeah.
Keep on smiling or put on your video if you can. It'd be good to put on your video. Thank you.
I shall get ready to take the screenshot. Everyone just keep smiling. Yeah. We have 1 page down, so 3 more to go. Just keep on smiling. Thank you. Okay, we are halfway there.
You're halfway there. Oh gosh. Okay.
Mine is like a snip and sketch. Yep. Okay. Now I'm on the 3rd page. Just keep smiling. Thank you.
That's a long smile.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I think that's fine, Simi.
Okay, all done. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate your patience in sitting down and listening. And as they always say, as far as values is concerned, we all need reminders. All right. So thank you very much. We will see you at the next webinar. Is there anything else, Sui?
No. Please
All
look
right.
out for our next webinar. We can find it on Zerado's Facebook as well.
Sure. Right. For those in anti-doping, it's on red blood spot
Red blood
testing.
spot
Yep.
testing. Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sir Bobby. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you to all Filipino participants who attended.
Yes,
Filipino
Filipino
coaches. Thank you so much.
Thank you po.
Thank
Thank you, Sir Gobi.
Thank
Thank you to CoachSG.
Maraming salamat.
Marco.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Marami pong salamat.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Maraming salamat.
Sama-sama.
Thank you so much po.
Hi, Ma'am Mariel.
Hello po, sir.
Hi, thanks, Mariel. See you.
Hi, Sir Gobi. Hi, Sui.
Hey,
Hi, Steph.
Steph. Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So if you're not rushing anywhere, you can stay a few minutes.
Waiting for you, Gobi.
It takes a bit of time. Okay, who else is around? Roy is gone. Michael, is he from Ukraine?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, Azhar, Eliza. I think it was a wonderful session. I think the details were all there.